Hey guys, how's it going? This is Trieu. I'm a filmmaker located on Oahu, Hawaii. Today is going to be a behind the scenes on how we shot this rooftop action film. Now, this video isn't an in-depth tutorial on how to shoot fighting scenes, and honestly, this is kind of like my first time shooting and editing a action film, so I was really excited about this project, and I think this was like a really good step forward in getting myself into action cinema. So for the concept and idea, I reached out to Nathan Young, aka Sifu Nate, on Instagram, who is a Jeet Kune Do and Wing Chun martial artist, as well as a teacher. He teaches in Japan right now, and we wanted to collaborate last year. However, things didn't quite align, and so this year I thought about taking the chance to reach out to him and see if he just so happens to be in Hawaii. Lo and behold, he was in Hawaii for about a week, and I reached out to him, and he was like, yeah, I'm free this week until the following Monday. Then I invited my friend Isaiah, who is the owner of Fitness Serve Daily, repping the shirt right now. He loves being a part of action films and as well as just filmmaking in general. It was perfect because we've always wanted to shoot action together. We just never really found the time. So this is a good chance. Nate also brought one of his students, Malik, who also teaches martial arts. So this was my first time meeting him. And since this was all our first time working together, we all sort of just came and kind of just went with the flow. So initially we were hoping that each character in the story would be on the same level in terms of fighting. However, we had to deviate from the script a little bit because we wanted to make the fighting a little bit more realistic. Not every movie is made to be perfect. Movies have their flaws too. And even though our script didn't translate exactly onto production, we still made it work regardless. And the whole point was just to get ourselves started. No opportunity is perfect, but it's good to get started with something rather than overthinking and waiting. Honestly, for a first film that we made, it was pretty decent considering that this was no budget and we didn't really have a lot of time either. Now I'm going to talk about production. For location, we arrived around 8 in the morning, and originally the plan was to meet up and go to this rooftop at the university at Manoa. Sifu Nate knew of a few different rooftops that he shot at before, and he showed me a reference video that he did in the past. However, this time the door wasn't open and there was some kind of security on it, so we spent about maybe a good half an hour to an hour location scouting. Fortunately, Sifu Nate and Malik were able to find a rooftop, just this random biomed plant building. Fortunately, nobody really kicked us out there, so we were really glad to be able to use that spot. It had so many different elements that I liked. Like there was a greenhouse, there were kind of like old rusty metal, and there were just different spots to shoot different angles. After we arrived at the rooftop, we spent about a good hour rehearsing the choreo as well as setting up our gear. I used the Sony a7S III along with a gimbal on a 24 to 50 millimeter lens. And my friend Prince, who was also assisting me as the second camera, he used a Sony a6-400. And he was also using gimbal too. So I wanted our cameras to have the same color profiles to be able to match the colors the best in post-production. We prioritized the choreo first because that's when motivation is the highest for everybody, and it's not so hot in the day where everybody's just overheating. The 3 talents that we had, they were all wearing jackets, so the idea or the choreo was that like everyone like takes off their jacket, and that's when things get serious. So we pretty much just filmed almost the first entire half with our jackets on, and that was pretty hot. Like I could see everyone just visibly sweating, and I was wearing a tank top, so I got pretty sunburned. We shot this film Hong Kong style. So if you don't know what Hong Kong cinema style is, then you should watch movies like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Jet Li, Sammo Hung, and all the greats in China. I grew up watching those movies, so I remember just being very drawn to those kind of action scenes because they would show pretty much all of the hits and all of like the punches and the impacts without cutting so drastically as they do in Western films. Western films tend to really have a lot of shaky movement and cuts to it, so we wanted to avoid that to the best of our ability and to be more intentional about where our cuts are going to be. Since Malik has been very involved with stunt choreography as well as filming action scenes, he really took the lead on creating the choreo with this fight scene. And for me, I learned a lot on the shoot because I realized just how much work the camera has to do and coordinate to be able to cooperate with the talent themselves. The talents, they have to memorize their own choreos, but the person behind the camera needs to know where to weave, where to kind of move to be able to catch the best angle for the hit to land. So I learned a lot from him as my first time being a cinematographer for these action scenes. For instance, this one take here was me pushing in with the camera to reveal Isaiah's character, stepping away as he's coming in, then panning the gimbal to the left and right to catch the hits, and finally sweeping behind Nate. If this were a oneer, which is a single continuous action, the camera will continue weaving into the middle to catch Nate finally dropping his jacket. So by the time we shot our dialogue scene, it was already high noon, and we needed to have the talents put on their jackets again. So we did this really quickly. So we had my friend as well as Sifu Nate's friend, Monkey Leroy, hold a boom pole attached to a Sennheiser MKE 600 mic to capture the sound to its best ability. And I was so glad that we captured sound that day because if not, the audio on camera just sounds horrendous. Like literally, it just sounds like whoosh. So having an overhead boom mic above the talent is very useful to capture dialogue scenes, especially on a windy day. So as I mentioned, the shoot lasted from mid-morning all the way to high noon, I think around 1 p.m. And by that time, it was really hot. I was wearing a tank top that day, so I got like the meanest sunburn because I forgot to wear sunscreen and I was really in the zone with filming. I'm still peeling right now on my shoulders, so if you're going to film midday, make sure you always wear sunscreen. So now you're probably wondering, how did we film that extended scene after Nate puts down his jacket? Well, that was unintentionally a different scene because what's funny was we decided to shoot an extended scene the day after the shoot on the rooftop, and when we came back on campus again, we found out that the rooftop wasn't open and the building was closed. So we had to improvise and come up with maybe a different scene to the story that made sense. And in this case, we thought of a flashback to maybe a different area or different moment in time. What I suggested was to use a match cut to be able to seamlessly transition from one scene to the next and make it feel like it was just kind of imagining a flashback in a separate point of time. All right, so now we're going to go into post-production. This is basically my timeline, and what I'm going to be talking about next is how I assembled all these clips together, the sound design, and as well as color grading eventually. So I remember shooting this on this day, and then right after I came home, I managed to put together the first scene so effortlessly and so quickly that everyone was like, how did you edit this so fast? And the reason why this was seamless was because Malik already just kind of pieced together mentally what the sequence was going to be in mind. So all of our shots were intentional. We knew what the next cut was going to be and how the timeline was basically going to go, right? So being in this flow state, I was able to just kind of put everything together and to kind of create what you see right here. So usually when I first start out, I put all the clips onto a timeline, and you can see this is about 2 hours worth of footage. So I go through every single one of these clips before I start editing. Just choose the ones that I felt were the best takes, and sort of just bring them up to this second layer right here. So all of these are the good takes. And then that's how I just assembled them onto the timeline. Now, this is something worth mentioning because I actually spent a lot of time doing this, but my friend Isaiah actually ripped his pants on this day, and I had to go through every single frame just trying to patch up his pants. So without this node, you would see every single rip of his pants right here. So yeah, with this node on, I just sort of like patched it with this window tool right here. And I'll show you my keyframes. So every single one of these frames, I just like moved this black spot like just a little bit and a little bit until, yeah, kind of like I had to cover it up. But I would say this took me about a good hour to an hour and a half. So if you look at it closely, you can see that at times the black box moves, but someone who doesn't know about this won't tell anyway. And now my favorite thing to talk about, color grading. So for color, I wanted to go with sort of a rich filmic, sort of like a old kung fu movie style look. And so I used a lot of textures like film grain right here to sort of make it look less digital. And I made sure that during production that the highlights, like the skies, weren't being clipped. And so since it was a very bright day, I knew I had to use a 6 to 9 stop variable ND filter, which is pretty strong. Yeah, and you can even see right here in this wide shot that there's some heavy vignetting in the corners. So I pretty much just had to like zoom in post to hide that. And the reason why the color grading works so well is because the production did most of the heavy lifting. If I just kind of disable all these stylistic choices that I made, this is pretty much what it looks like from log to Rec 709. I mean, it's a little bland, but once you add in like exposure, contrast curves, for contrast, I use an S curve right here. So this is just to kind of lower the shadows and bring up the midtones just a little bit more. Now for saturation, I've been using this a lot more now, but here with this node, I actually use a HSV color space. So what this does is it helps me achieve cinematic saturation by isolating and adjusting the color depth. So it allows me to increase saturation in areas that are like the lower and middle saturation areas versus the already oversaturated areas when you increase the saturation overall. So instead of using this slider right here, I'm able to use this gain and adjust the green channel to increase or decrease the color depth. So this is without the saturation, and this is with the saturation. So this is a little secret that I do with my color grading. And then for the look, I just kind of did like a little few tweaks to the shadows as well as the midtones. So I add a little bit of teal into the shadows and then some orange in the highlights in the midtones. Now for sound design, so you can see pretty much this is what my timeline looks like for sound designs. And I use Artlist, and I try to be intentional and thoughtful about my sound choice. I use different sound effects from Artlist, like cinematic drums for the music, urban traffic ambiance for the rooftop. And I even downloaded this sound pack to get most of the hits that you hear. Having really good sound design is what's going to sell those punches and kicks instead of just hearing music. Also, one thing to point out too is that usually in a fight, things are happening really fast, so you wouldn't be able to hear things like impacts or like grunts or yells and stuff. So in filmmaking, it's good to emphasize the emotional expression so that it feels more immersive when you're watching it. So that's all for the behind the scenes of our action film. If you stuck this long to the end, then I really hope that this was a fun and interesting video to watch. If you did, hit that like button as well as consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. I'm really glad that I'm stepping into action cinema more this year for my filmmaking because it's not very common in Hawaii, and I'm making more and more connections with the people that are passionate about making it. So I feel like it's only a matter of time before momentum starts to pick up, and I meet the right producers who like finding work like this. So I learned a lot from this project, and my intention moving forward this year is to do more of this, and hopefully things will align. So thank you all for watching again, and as always, take care.